Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, you know this is one of my favorite time of the interview, the beginning, because I get a chance to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things that I deem very, very expensive. Time. What a commodity that has been offered us all 24 hours. How we utilize that will tell me much about you. The other is the journey. The journey housed who we were and made us into these beautiful, gorgeous creatures that are here. And so I'm excited to have Rachel here to come and share with us both of those precious commodities with us here at Threads of Enlightenment. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm honored to be here, honestly.
Thank you. Tell the folks, how do you serve? And we laugh about it because I know the extent of your service. So tell us, how do you serve currently?
Currently,
Yeah.
currently, I am a holistic.
I had to put
Yeah,
that little disclaimer
yeah,
there.
sure, sure. Currently, I am a holistic psychotherapist, a transformational life coach, a shamanic practitioner. Um, I serve as a mother as well, and as a human being, sharing my energy with collective consciousness. That's how I'm serving right now.
And folks, she has been doing this for a while, so I'm excited about this conversation. One of our customs here, Rachel, is to go back into that first space by which we call family. Mom and dad give us this beautiful kiss. The nurses send us home. The doctors send go home. And then they're going to bring you to this beautiful house that mom and dad has prepared for you. And we call that the family. So one of the first locations that they put us is that restrictive place that is called a cage. I mean, a crib. And so we are going to be
Mm-hmm.
educated from mom and dad's trauma because they're both traumatized. And they are now going to
Yeah.
impart their thesis, I would say, to people from time to time into us to begin to educate us as to who we are based on what they say we are. So invite us into that family. And what was it like?
Yeah. So, um, well, I was very blessed to be born into a family of artists and deep thinkers. My father he's no longer with us. He died in 2001. He was a poet and a professor of literature. Um, and my mother she is still with us, a writer, an actor, and a director, and a teacher. And and my early years were, from my recollection as a child,
Yeah.
quite idyllic. We lived on acres of woods, and I have two sisters. We had three German shepherds and five cats and ducks and things like, it was a beautiful place to live.
Yeah.
But in terms of ideology, um, my parents were very open-minded
Hmm.
and very spiritual in their own way. My mother was raised Jewish, my father was raised Catholic. And so they said, you know what, just do what feels right to you. There was definitely a shamanic element to the way
Yeah.
that I grew up. We were very nature-based people, very animistic, um, very close to the spirit of all living beings. And
Hmm.
so as a child, I remember that's where my shamanic work really began, was talking to trees as though they were my friends, because I didn't know any better. As you were talking earlier about society and the way that it forms, I didn't know that a tree couldn't be my friend. So what? Of
Yeah.
course they're my friends. So I was very lucky in that regard, that there was a lot of space
Yeah.
to find out who I was. Now, the shadow side of that is that, as you mentioned, our parents are wounded. We're all wounded in some way.
Yeah.
And there was immense pressure to individuate, to be beyond the buying sheep herd of humanity and do the deep inner work. So I was reading Carl Jung at the age of 12.
Wow.
I was learning how to individuate. I was learning how important it is to know your true self. And it almost became, dogma is a strong word, but I
Yeah.
would say that it became imperative that we be self-aware,
Yeah.
to the extent that it really took a toll on me, because I am an extremely sensitive person. And for right or wrong, growing up, I would take things very literally. So because I felt that I wasn't psycho-spiritually evolving fast enough,
Hmm.
I would get very down on myself. And it actually ended up creating a collapse. And I had very low self-esteem growing up. All I wanted to do was be normal, but I didn't like normal people.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Hmm.
So I didn't fit in. So I was constantly looking for the misfits, looking for the radicals in my peer group. And I, thank God, I found them. And in high school, and some of them are still very dear friends of mine, so
Yeah.
blessed to say, and they're still out there doing great things. But there's a downside to all of this inner work, right? At least for people like me, and I don't want to say this is true for everyone, but I just felt like I was failing
Yeah.
at the growth part. And so I developed an eating disorder. I was, as I said, I had very low self-esteem. I was pressuring myself constantly to be perfect. And it took me decades to be able to let go of the perfection part,
Where did
you
you
know?
pick that up
And
from, Rachel?
what, the perfection
Yeah,
part?
where did you? Because here you are in this idealistic situation in the sense of nature and the artist, the deep thinking
Hmm.
family, exposure to becoming knowledgeable about the self, and within all of that,
Yeah.
you picked up a pretty strong feeling of needing to be perfect. Do you remember
Yeah.
what was it that brought that into your being?
Yeah, it was a desire to please my father. It
Hmm.
was absolutely a desire to live up to the standards of my father, who, by the way, was an amazing visionary poet and teacher. And I still am friends with some of his students to this day who carry his message on, and they became professors themselves and say, I carry him with me every time I'm in
Yeah,
a classroom. He was a very powerful man, and a wonderful man, and he had his wounds.
yeah, yeah,
And it took me a long time to see my father as a man
yeah.
and not as this. We often
As a demigod.
deify our
Yeah, I
parents.
know. I had the
Right.
same
So
thing.
I did see him as a demigod.
Yeah.
I always think of, Osho talks about Zorba the Buddha,
Hmm.
that the ideal man is to be rooted in this earth, in this world, and also be a transcendent like a Buddha.
Yeah.
And my father had a lot of that. He definitely had a lot of Zorba in him. He loved Zorba the Greek.
Yeah,
But
one of my
the
favorite
the
movies.
drinking and the dancing and
Yeah,
he was very much of this earth.
yeah,
And so, but yeah, so to answer your question, I wanted very much for him to be proud of me, and he was. But in my own critical mind,
yeah,
it was never enough. It was never enough. So I can't fully blame my father, because
yeah,
my own psyche played a very strong part in um, how I took the teachings. Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I was curious as to the entrance of that belief because it's important. Once we
Mhm.
identify the entrance, we can then deal with it if you we
Mhm.
can
Yeah.
handle it
Absolutely.
and excavate it out. So here is this girl, this young shamanic um, person that is able to communicate with trees and is learning about all the personal tools and the power within growing with oneself. And she begins to experience some yeah, some rough thinking. She brought in another energy within her space. That
Yeah.
energy is now driving her this way. You found your tribe. You're in high school hanging out. And after you found your tribe and you're moving through life and you still have this thing that is walking with you, and the perfection and all that stuff and the lack of not.
Mhm.
How did she navigate her life even after you found your tribe and you're moving through in your growth, if you will?
Mhm. Yeah. So, um, I, I I think a lot of it was being true to who I was.
Mhm.
And by the way, I need to acknowledge, like, I guess we're talking here in 20s, 20s
Yeah,
into 30s. Um, I I still was who I was, and and I started in theater. I was an actor and a writer for many many years, and I still do writing. So my art helped me to express myself. I started traveling a lot. I started just absorbing.
yeah.
And when I spent more time outside of the small town that I grew up in, I began to think, oh, I'm not so bad. There are some people out there that are, more messed up than I am, and I love them too. And there's room for grace
Yeah,
here. I should give some grace to myself as well. Um, but, into my 30s, it was actually around the time my father died that I realized, oh my gosh, I don't have an identity.
wow.
I've basically been creating this persona to not to please him, that's too simple, but
Yeah.
to be in alignment with his teachings, which
Hmm.
were worthy and all of that. But I was like, where's me? Like, where am I in all this? And so I took it upon myself to really figure out who I was. And that's when I started doing the big travel. Like, I would go to India. I went to India 3 times. I wrote a book of poetry. I wrote 3 screenplays. I wrote 3 novels, and I just was like poor. So I basically, it was my creative work that
Yeah,
helped me to break through a lot of this stuff. Um, but and a lot of solitude
yeah,
really helped because I needed to sit with who I was instead of having outside influence. So self and solitude became a real focus of my path, and
yeah.
still is to some extent to this day.
I think will always be a part of your path because solitude is where we acquire our strength. Um, Most
Hmm.
people in the Western culture is afraid of that space of solitude because they don't understand.
Yeah,
They think solitude has to do with loneliness and all this kind of stuff, and that has nothing to
right,
do. But it
right.
is the place by which you get to know who you are, and you begin to see the
Hmm.
greatness within you as you are in that space of solitude because you are there with your thoughts. You are excavating in your doing several things, asking questions and becoming familiar, if you will, with who you are,
Hmm.
your authentic
Yeah.
self. And as you begin to become
Hmm.
familiar with who you are, you then began to learn about your boundaries, your these are the things that you discover when you're in that space of solitude. It is the necessary space to be in order to grow and to continue growing and living in this world as an individual. I love that space always. And I
Yeah, yeah.
recommend
I
people to
love it
get
too.
there.
Yeah, I wrote a book about it. That's how much I loved it. So, yeah, called Celebrating Solitude. Yeah, it's a really important tool
Yeah.
to help you to, as you said, step into who you truly are, find out who you are,
Yeah.
and celebrate that person. Yeah.
I would tell them that because I grew up in the church, Rachel, and I remember reading that Bible every time Jesus Christ was alone, he came out and he did some of the most incredible things. He was walking on water, doing all kinds of stuff. And so I kind of figured it out then. Wait a minute, there's a lot of power being in that space. And so it was not until as you said, I was living to please my father and for many years. And then when I was introduced to Ken Primus, myself, I was in my 30s. And I
Hmm.
realized until then I was living for them to please both my parents because they were both here at the time. And I began to
Mhm.
embark on a journey of self-discovery. And I wrote a chapter in my book about solitude because I understood that it's a space, I call it a space by which one must visit daily in order to be
Yeah.
a mature human spirit, as we say. So here you are, you're asking yourself the
Mhm.
questions, you are learning about solitude, you're discovering you. After that's a profound
Mhm.
question that you would ask yourself, who am I? And after the death of your
Mhm.
father. So here you are, and you're discovering who you are. What did you begin to see, Rachel, as you began to dig, excavate? What did you start to discover about you?
The I'll start with the awakening part, which was acceptance,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
I when I was trying to figure out, is the way that I'm living correct? Is it in alignment with, my beliefs? What are my beliefs? And going through all of that, I began to realize how important acceptance is. So part of getting rid of perfectionism was to accept and love where I was right now.
Yeah.
Because being on the path of awakening is all we can do
Yeah.
in that moment. It is a path, it's not a point, right? So
Hmm.
enlightenment even is that awakening moment. Um, but for me, enlightenment is the constant understanding that we are all connected, and
Yeah.
that 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 harming others harms us. There's no difference between the two. So slowly over time, I began to realize. I lived in New York City, and walking through the streets of New York City, I remember I did an experiment once in my 30s, where you know how it is in the city. Everybody's got their head down. They're
Yep.
got places to go. And so one day I said, I'm going to do an experiment. And I walked down 23rd Street with a smile on my face, up like this,
Yeah.
walking, hey, making eye contact
Yeah.
with other New Yorkers,
You
which
don't
is
do
not
that, you
advised.
know.
And and you know what happened, Ken?
Hmm.
Can you guess? They smiled
They
back.
smile. Yeah. New Yorkers
The
are
people
beautiful
would
people.
smile back.
Yeah.
Most people, they are.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I would make eye contact with someone coming by me, and I just have it lights, not a crazy smile,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
a nice smile on my, like I was thinking of something pleasant.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, they would meet my gaze and smile back, and I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
So you see, the energy that we are putting out is the energy we're receiving. And that's not only woo-woo spiritual stuff, that's quantum physics,
Yeah.
right? That's the idea um of everything being connected, the spooky action at a distance kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's also, superpositioning, right? Quantum superpositioning, where
Hmm.
it's like, is it a particle or is it a wave?
Yep.
That depends on how you test for it,
Yeah.
right? So if I see the world as something negative, the world will come to me as negative. If I see the world, and negative and positive are extremes. I don't mean to use
Yeah.
those terms, but they're the easiest ones to use. If I see the world in a positive light, the world will predominantly look positive to me. And so that was my moment of awakening, is I am creating. So in a shamanic perspective, the uh, Aboriginal shamans talk about dream time, and
Hmm.
that we are dreaming the world into being. And it's so true.
Yeah.
We are creating the world based on the energy that we are putting out. That doesn't mean bad shit doesn't happen. It
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
means that we know how to handle it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we are on two
So that,
journeys, Rachel. I think we are on the individual journey to get to know self, which is critical. One must know self in order to embark on the other journey, and that is the
Mhm.
interdependent journey. You have to go on that independent journey in order to understand your place within that interdependent journey. And if you cannot jump over, you just can't. You got to know you before you can
Yeah, yeah,
engage with others.
100%.
And so it is those two journeys that we get a chance to experience while we're here. And the prize, as I said, is to walk that interdependent journey where you get a chance to intermingle with others as you're sharing insights and so forth. And you see the awakening in
Right.
them as you're discussing through questions and so forth. To me, I tell people is that one becomes enlightened as you become a better student of yourself. That is it. As I get to know
Yeah,
who I am, I got to learn how
beautiful.
to love you. You talk about acceptance. I was the biggest um, mess up on the planet. I had to learn how to love him. I had to learn how to forgive him. I had to learn how to be patient with him. I had to learn how to be empathetic with him. I had to learn how to hug him, encourage him. I had to learn how to
Hmm.
speak kindly to him. All of these things I have to learn about with me first so that I can go now. And in that interdependent relationship, I can practice what I've learned. And if you have not learned that with
Right.
yourself, there's no way you can practice this when you're dealing with people because you will deal with them the way that you are. As you said, if you are mean, you will be mean and you will attract mean people.
Right.
It is how
Right. Right.
it is set up. And so uh,
Mm.
once you begin to switch your perspective from that dark thinking, you will become a creator in your life. Here you are, you recognize that it is your thoughts, you recognize all of that, you begin to do the hard work because it is hard work. And as you're moving forward in your life and you recognize where you're at and you see the fruits of the changes begin to happen, how did you start to relate, Rachel, to the interdependent um, aspect of your journey as you're working on you and you're now recognizing that the
Mhm.
shifting is happening where you're now going to interlock with others.
Um, well, as an actor and a writer, what motivated me the most was communication with other people,
Mhm.
communicating, sharing, connecting. But I began to realize that I was only connecting so far as anyone would read my poem or my book or my screenplay,
Yeah,
or only so far as the play that I was acting in or the production I was acting in. And I wanted to do more than that. So that's what got me into first I got into to doing transformational life coaching,
yeah,
which led into getting my license as a therapist. I wanted to reach more people. And that even just recently expanded the service that we were talking about earlier. Um, One-on-ones with clients is beautiful, but I was still not reaching more more people that I wanted to reach.
yeah,
So I just recently revamped my business so that I now have a little hub where I'm teaching classes on self-crafting, on what we're talking about getting to know and honor your authentic true self. Um, and this is important, cleaning up some of that wounding, all that wounding, if we can, as much as possible, so that we can step out into the world as wisdom sharers as we reach midlife, because that's the time in our life when we have gathered enough life experience to um, to process what we've gone through, because just life experience itself is not wisdom.
yeah,
It involves the processing and understanding of that interconnectedness. And how do I take this gift of my experience and share it with the world? So this organization that I've created, this community I've created, involves going through like a year-long program where we're doing this. We're finding out who we are, we're cleaning, or I say polishing the gem of that being,
yeah,
and then learning how to take our wisdom and share it with the world. That to me is at this point, and it's a new thing. So, my numbers are only just small, but hopefully they'll grow. Is the way that we can take that awareness, and it's not just about self betterment, right?
yeah,
Because that's not enough. Being
hmm,
the best self you can be is wonderful,
yeah,
but what are you doing with that energy? We have to give it back to the communities that we live in. And as you said so rightly earlier, community is essential. We heal in community,
Oh yeah.
but a community is comprised of individuals, and the community is only as healthy as the individuals within it. So the
Hmm.
inner work is essential so that our communities can be healthy. So that's what I'm starting to teach now. And I focus really with women in midlife, but I work with everybody.
Yeah.
The idea is, at this time in our life, between say 40 and 65, this is our time to
Hmm.
get ourselves right with the world, get ourselves right internally, so that we can be the wisdom sharers that young people really, really need,
Yeah.
and then we can step into elderhood, which is a whole other thing, but
I love it
yeah,
all. I love it
so there's a
all.
lot of work to be done.
Oh yeah, I believe so. So talk to us about the polishing, Rachel, because that space where the polishing, and I tell people that personal development is not for weak people. You have to be strong, will, strong-minded, and all the other thing. You have to be courageous, all those wonderful words that we use. Um, as you were excavating after that question with your dad, it's a powerful thing, and you have to face this fact that you wanted to be perfect when you started excavating
Hmm.
and started discovering stuff. What tools did you bring in so that you can polish, as you said, those this gem that you've noticed within you, and you saw some rough
Hmm.
edges, if you will. What were some of those rough edges, and what tools did you bring in to polish them, as you state?
Yeah, beautiful question. For me personally, it was really the self-criticism was what was really insidious and awful, and just everything, questioning everything I did. And is this, comparing, the comparison trap, as I
Yeah.
call it? Well, these people over here my age are doing this, and da, da, da. And in the work that I did on myself was a couple of phases, and one of them was acceptance, was a big one.
Hmm.
But the other big tool that I ask everyone to work with who works with me is just awareness. Just bring awareness, non-judgmental awareness to what you're doing, right? So if you have a habit, or you have a thought, or a belief that it's not serving you anymore,
Yeah.
rather than chastising yourself for it, or calling yourself broken, or saying something's wrong with you, instead see it as a blessing.
Yeah.
See it as a blessing that you were aware enough to notice it, and you now know that you can course correct, because we are here to learn and grow. There's no judgment attached to it. There's no, if we could just look at all of our problems and say, huh, yeah, that's going on in my life right now, instead of, oh, I'm such a terrible person,
Yeah.
right? If we could do that, see how your body opens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen
Hmm.
to your body. Your body is your ally. You will know immediately if you're feeling good about something or not good about something. Do you feel open, or do you feel closed? Right. So bringing that awareness, bringing that acceptance into where you are on your journey right now, and be gentle. Just, God, be gentle with yourself.
Yeah. A
It's
lot of
it's
people.
fine enough that you're getting up every day and trying to
Yeah.
uh, do your life in a balanced way. My two criteria for everybody is: are you harming yourself, or are you harming anyone else? And if the answer to both of those is no, you're good. You know?
That's some good advice. I always tell them that whatever you feel, because that's how I was able to heal. That I discovered that was there, and I would say thank you for bringing me to this point. Because whatever it was, I knew I put it
Yeah.
there to quote unquote. I perceived that it would protect me. But then I realized at a certain
Hmm.
age that that protection is no longer necessary. That's a painful thing that I need to address. And so uh,
Yeah.
Rachel, I used to have conversation with myself. I used to have dinner with myself, especially when I saw things like that. And I would invite it to dinner. I said,
Hmm.
let's have a conversation. I just want to thank you for your service, for bringing me to the place that you have brought me. And I thank you so much. I appreciate how you have been a part of my life. But at this point,
Yeah.
at now, I would like to bring in another helper, I would say, another helper. And whatever that new perspective
Right.
that I would be dealing with, that is my new helper to assist me. And so I never really uh,
Um,
pushed it away.
yeah.
I just told it thank you and for its service.
Mhm.
But I have someone else here that will take me from on the journey from this point on. And once I've done
Yeah.
that, I
That's real key.
recognized they never really came back. It was really an interesting thing that I noticed within my life, that once I had that type of
Yeah.
conversation, the thought of it never came back because I felt that we reconcile our relationship. We had closure, if you will, and we went
Mhm.
on and we parted ways. I would
Mm.
tell people that I parted ways with guilt many years ago, and I don't know what that is anymore. So guilt was another one. Shame was another one that I had to have a conversation with.
Sure. Sure.
And as I had conversation with these entities that were walking with me, and I thank them again for their service and for their time with me. But from this time on, and it worked for me, kept me out of trouble, kept me sane, if you will. So I would tell people go ahead and have
Yeah. It's
conversation.
about yeah, it's about not rejecting,
Yeah.
right? Because all of our emotions are like little children and they just want our love and attention.
Yes.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so at least I had enough sense for that. So, so here you are. You are
Mhm.
recognizing that the need, and you had mentioned earlier that you were there was some focus towards women that around that age, in that the age of wisdom, as you stated, and to bring them understanding as to their place on this planet and their relationship with others. So, how you're here right now and you're on this path. Um, we had talked about uh, um, that transition, and I want you to invite us because I know your time is limited. I want you to invite us into one of those precious, holy moments when you are there chatting with someone, and you may be in the transitioning them, if you will. I love that terminology, the transition. And it began from your conversation because you know the question to ask them to get the result that they need because you've been there. It is your
Yeah.
journey. You're familiar with those
Yeah.
roads. When you had that encounter and you were engaged and you hear them talking and you have located them, and now you are going to guide them through with your questions. Invite us to one of those precious moments, and how was it,
Mhm.
and what happened there?
Yeah, I think in my work with individuals, one of the most powerful exercises that we do is inner child work. And so when we do an encounter with where they're meeting with and addressing a very critical moment in their childhood,
Mhm.
but they are coming into the scene as a grown up. That's often when I see the biggest, uh, release
Yeah,
of held pain and trauma um, because of love,
yeah,
right? Because when they are finally giving themselves the love they didn't get as children, and that works in two ways. One, the inner child feels loved and held and protected,
yeah,
and then on the other hand, the grown up realizes how powerful they are
yeah,
to to affect that change through love, through gentleness, through kindness, and that they have the capacity to do that is really where the big transformation
yeah,
happens. That's mostly when I see the aha moment.
yeah,
Sometimes it happens in a conversation where like, oh, it just occurred to me that
yeah.
but usually it's in an enactment or an encounter like that.
Yeah, it is a precious moment because when they make that transition over, it's just breathtaking. It is intoxicating. All of those things that you use for that, and it is a great place
Yeah.
to be as you are watching and engaging with the individual. So here you are. You are this. And guys, if I tell you the list of things that she has done, it, it would be another hour or so. This woman has been serving for many years. And I know you guys, I know that she has to run, but I want to introduce you a little to her. She has been through much. She has been serving for a long time. She has organizations all over the world, in India and all different places. I have someone, guys, that are here that has been through some stuff. And you guys know that I've talked to you about those. We need to find someone who's been through some stuff. I have to keep it clean because we're on, I don't know who's listening, but they have gone through. And because they have gone through, they're aware of certain things that you are not aware of because simply because you're busy, you may be taking care of the kids a lot, you have work, and you're not focused on that. But she has gone through, gone past, and came out on the other side. And she is aware of the pain. She's aware of the discouragement, all of those things that you're experiencing today. She's aware of it, and she knows how to transition you out of it. And so I want you guys to be aware of her. I'm going to provide all of her information. Get her books, get those things. And I've told you about books. Books house one's energy, and those energy is stored in
Hmm.
words. And as you read those words, when you put yourself in a state to be fed, those words will jump and leap into your being and change you because it's happened to me many, many times. And I have this powerful woman that is before you guys. I want you to grab her hands, get into her space because, again, I know she has to run. I want to bring her back. We didn't even touch anything yet. So,
Right.
Rachel, I want to thank you so much for
Happy to
coming
do.
to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been really good.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and I would be honored to come back. I know we have so much I think that we could talk about, and but it was a blessing to have this time. So
Yes,
thank you for providing this space.
you are welcome.